admitted to the killings. But Jeremy Skibicki's lawyers say he's not criminally responsible. As CBC's Josh Crabb reports, it means a trial that was supposed to be heard by a jury will now be decided by a judge.
Lawyers for Jeremy Skibicki told a Manitoba court Monday morning their client admits to killing Morgan Harris, Mercedes Myron, Rebecca Contois, and a fourth unidentified woman given the name Mushkade Bishake Ikwe Ibon, or Buffalo Woman. Skibicki has pleaded not guilty to 4 counts of first-degree murder. His lawyers told court they plan to argue he's not criminally responsible for their deaths. His jury trial was set to begin Wednesday, but in light of the developments Monday, the Crown is consenting to a trial by judge alone. Prosecutors initially opposed trial by judge, but now agreed because they no longer have to prove Skibicki caused the women's deaths. Outside court, Morgan Harris's cousin, Melissa Robinson, says hearing Skibicki's admission was a shock, but it brought some relief to family members. They plan to take the day to reflect on what they heard in court. Josh Crabb, CBC News, Winnipeg.
The Manitoba Court of Appeal has dismissed disgraced fashion mogul Peter Nygard's extradition appeal. The decision comes more than a year after Nygard's lawyer argued their case in court. Nygard is set to face a trial in the United States for 9 offenses, including sex trafficking and racketeering, after all his Canadian trials are complete. The 82-year-old was found guilty by a Toronto jury last November on 4 counts of sexual assault. He's expected to be sentenced later this month. He's still facing additional charges in Manitoba and Quebec. More than a year after Winnipeg City Council voted to change the name of Bishop Grandin Boulevard, the first new signs for Abenogi Mi'kina are going up. The CBC's Cameron McLean reports.
City crews were out this morning at the intersection of St. Mary's Road to install the first official sign for Abenogi Mi'kina. They're starting with overhead signs, then moving on to the street name signs. The work is expected to take until next month. Council voted in March of last year to change the name of 2 streets named for Bishop Vital Grandin, an early supporter of Canada's residential school system. Grandin Street in St. Boniface will also have new signs with its new name, Tapwewin Way. A formal renaming ceremony with Indigenous elders will be held in June. Cameron McLean, CBC News, Winnipeg.
Students for Justice in Palestine will hold a protest at the University of Manitoba starting tomorrow. Protesters are asking the university to allow students to support Palestinian causes without fear of academic or legal consequences. Other encampments in other parts of Canada and the U.S. have been tense. Mona Zangana is with Students for Justice in Palestine. She says the goal is to get the university to meet with them, not make other students feel uncomfortable.
This does not have anything to do with the Jewish community. It's just simply that we want to make sure that Palestinian students on campus have rights. We don't want to take away from anybody's rights. Like I said, we will not be in any way tolerable to any sort of racism, anti-Semitism.
Emily Kalo is a Jewish student at the U of M.
As a Jewish student and someone who's pursuing education and wears my Judaism proudly, it's a little bit frightening to see because we continue to see Jewish students feel targeted at these events and feel like they can't access their education, and we have a right to that education. We're paying for that education.
The Students for Justice in Palestine group says the encampment is only for students and faculty and says it will be peaceful. The encampment will run at the U of M from May 7th to the 9th. This is Holocaust Remembrance Day, and Prime Minister Justin Trudeau spoke at a service in Ottawa. He addressed the horrors of the Nazis' systemic murder of 6 million Jews during the Second World War, as well as the increasing anti-Semitism in modern-day Canada.
People have felt unsafe to live openly Jewish lives in Canada, and that's not right.
In a new report, B'nai B'rith Canada says reported anti-Semitic incidents have more than doubled in the past year to nearly 5,800. Exotic butterflies will be back at the Leaf. The Shirley Richardson Butterfly Garden was closed last spring after the Canadian Food Inspection Agency found it wasn't meeting containment regulations. In a statement, the Leaf says it has completed repairs to the gaps in the garden that were allowing butterflies to enter other parts of the building. It says it recently received a new CFIA permit to once again import and house butterflies. The first shipment of butterfly chrysalids have arrived and are in an emergence chamber. And Rick Bowness is leaving the Winnipeg Jets. The head coach has just announced his retirement. Bowness has coached 38 seasons in the NHL. The 69-year-old is one of only 3 head coaches, along with Scotty Bowman and Pat Quinn, to have served behind the bench in 5 different decades. And this year, he's a finalist for the Jack Adams Award as contributing most to his team's success. Rick Bowness will speak to media about his retirement as Winnipeg Jets head coach this afternoon. That is the CBC News from Winnipeg. Your next local CBC News is at 12:30.
Hello, my friends. Thanks for joining us today for Radio Noon here on CBC Radio 1, 89.3 FM, 990 AM, and everywhere on the CBC Listen app or CBC Manitoba's YouTube page. I'm Janet Stewart. If you had to evacuate your home, what would you grab? It is Emergency Preparedness Week in Manitoba. Coming up, we'll speak with an expert about what you need to know to keep yourself and your family safe. Learning to make something with your own 2 hands can fill you with a real sense of self-esteem, accomplishment, and pride. Coming up, we're going to meet a master paddle maker and hear what he gets from the experience of teaching others. It's seeding time in Manitoba. Producers around the province itching to get things done. We get the lay of the land next. For weeks now, whenever it's rained, we've said, our farmers need rain. Of course, that all depends on where those farmers we're talking about are located. We've reached Jill Verwey by Zoom to get a sense of how things really are looking out there. She's president of Keystone Agricultural Producers. Good afternoon.
Good afternoon.
How busy are things these days for producers in Manitoba?
I think right now everybody's kind of bracing Mother Nature in these little bit of rains that we've been getting over the last 2 weeks that have I guess, halted guys for the most part getting to the field. But like every year and every spring, Manitoba's very diverse from one corner to the other. And so we've got variabilities of rain since November to now, from anywhere from 38% up to 135% of a 30-year average. So that just lends to the next comment that there's guys that haven't got in the field, and there's some producers that have a quarter to maybe even a third of their crop in the ground. So it's very variable across the province.
I know you farm in Portage la Prairie area. How are things in your neck of the woods?
We're actually we're wet. We're a little bit too wet to get in the field. I know we've been out and tested a couple fields and did a little bit of harrowing just to see where the moisture is at. But there are some farmers on some really loamy, lighter soil that have been going in the area. But I think if we can get some nice sunny weather here over the next week, guys will certainly, especially with yesterday being so nice, guys are kind of thinking about testing the soil out this week. So hopefully this rain that they are forecasting here in our region for the next 24 to 48 hours, it holds off and we get some nice sun, and we can get the crop in the ground.
I'm struck by the variability in the province. As you may know, I hung out for a long time with meteorologist John Sauter, and he would always say on television, don't say, oh, lovely weather, because for somebody, yes, it's exactly the opposite of what they were hoping for. You're laughing as you hear me say this. And weather is a topic that, if we've got rain for a few days in the province, I've gotten lots of requests from media to comment on the weather, but it also gets me into trouble, because if I say that it's nice and we've got all our crop in the ground, inevitably there's someone probably in either Minto or Swan River that is battling a lot of moisture. And right now, actually, on the east side of Lake Manitoba,
north of the city, it's pretty wet in areas there where they're hoping that this stays away for a bit. So it is very variable, and it changes from year to year. So we just came off a year last year where we definitely have to get some replenishing of the ground moisture that we have. You don't have to go too far in the ground, and it's very dry. So concerns with dugouts being filled, particularly in the Carmen area, south in that area where guys rely on above ground water storage for irrigation. They're in particular, this year particularly, we didn't have any runoff in the spring. So, you don't have any water to fill up some of those irrigation dugout ponds. So, seeing the moisture this spring definitely is reassuring to get some of that moisture back in the ground. But I think most guys are itching to get out in the field, and for the most part that, first 4 to 6 inches of soil has some good moisture. So if we can get some nice moderate temperatures over the next month, we certainly don't want to see some hot and dry weather that we had last year in May and June. If we have some moderate weather, that's ideal for getting these spring crops, some cereals in the ground. Right now, I think I just got the most recent, the first update from Manitoba Agriculture, and 2% over the province. So not a lot of activity, but like I said, there's some producers that have more in the ground than others. But if we get some nice moderate warm temperatures, grass is starting to green up, pastures are starting to green up, so it's time to get to the field.
And the pastures that are greening up, of course, would be wonderful for the cattle of the livestock. Mud is always a concern for animals. How are they doing? What are you hearing in terms of muddiness for cattle producers?
Guys, I think, are anxious to get their livestock out of the yard. I know our livestock that we have on the dairy side, it's that it's pretty wet in the yard. You try your best to keep things bedded up, but inevitably you'd like to see them out on some nice green grass. And so now with the warmth over the weekend and with the moisture that we've had, things are starting to green up. So be able to get them out on some firm ground and get them out of the yard.
So with everyone itching to get out there, how much farm equipment may be on the move on our roads over the next little while?
It's that time of year where we share the road. Farmers are trying to get their crop in the ground in as short a period of time as they can, and I think the number of people that are on the roads. So I think just to be conscious and aware of slow moving vehicles on the road. Equipment is well marked, and there's lots of flashing lights, and so everyone just take your time. It doesn't take, you can slow down and wait for that farm equipment to get through that intersection or across the highway, or across that bridge. Just take a breath and realize that it's not going to hinder your transportation and time to get to the office or wherever you might be going, just to wait that extra couple minutes and make sure that everybody gets to the field safe. Everybody is able to get home safe after they're out working or taking their kids to soccer practice. We want everyone to be safe out there.
Jill Verwey, thank you for your time today.
Thank you very much. Take care.
Jill Verwey is president of Keystone Agricultural Producers.
You have lots of questions about your own life and this really complex world around you. I'm Saroja Coelho. I'm the host of the new live call-in show, Just Asking. I take your questions about what's in the news or your finances, health, even your relationships, and then throw them to an expert. Just Asking. Let's figure it out together.
Just Asking with Saroja Coelho. Live Saturday afternoon at 5 Eastern, 2 Pacific, and on CBC Listen.
It is 12:15 and you're listening to Radio Noon. I'm Janet Stewart. Thanks for being with us today. At 12:30 today, we're going to open up our phone lines to ask you, if there was an emergency, you're racing out of your home, what do you grab? What would you grab? And what should you grab? How should you prepare the older people that you have in your lives or the children in your lives? What's in your go bag? We're going to find out what should be in our go bags with an expert after 12:30. But join the conversation when we open our phone lines. Right now in Manitoba, we are sitting at a mix of sun and cloud in much of the province. There is rain on the way for Westman today. In Brandon, 60% chance of showers, and that'll continue into tomorrow. It's also quite a windy day with gusts between 40 and 60 kilometers an hour. In Winnipeg, a mix of sun and cloud with the showers, a 30% chance that they'll start this evening and continue into tomorrow. That's not the kind of weather that makes you think, you know what, I'm going to grab a paddle and head out. But we are going to talk in just a moment to a master paddle maker and find out what it's like to carve something like this with your friends and with people you've never met, holding a piece of history in your hands that you made with your very own hands. We'll chat about that coming up on Radio Noon. The group Friends of Lower Fort Garry offered a special workshop yesterday. Those who signed up learned how to carve their own paddle. It's a skill their instructor, Mark Blees, loves to pass along. He joins us now by Zoom. Hello, Mark. How are you?
Hi. I'm just fine.
How did the workshop go yesterday?
It went really well. We had a gorgeous day, beautiful venue, and we had some very, very eager paddle makers who had really never done it before in their lives. End up with a paddle that they could take home, and they had to finish varnishing at home, but everything else was done by the time the end of the day came around.
Now, you're a man of many skills. You taught industrial arts for many years in Selkirk and Lockport before you retire. Why teach people to carve paddles? You could teach them anything.
Well, I've been a canoeist my whole life, and of course, when you go canoeing, you need a paddle, and I figured at a very young age that I needed to learn how to do this. I also make canoes. And when I became
you figured out at a very young age that you needed to carve your own paddle?
Yes, I did. My dad said, if you want to go paddling, you need a paddle, go make one. So when I was about 11, 12 years old, I made my first paddle. It was rudimentary, but it worked. I learned how to do it much better later on, for sure.
How many people do you think you've taught now to create paddles?
Goodness. I taught paddle making in Lord Selkirk School Division for 36 years. I had hundreds of kids that have made paddles through that program. And now, since then, I've been running a program called Paddles Across Canada, where I go basically across Eastern Canada teaching paddle making in various locations, from reserves to inner city to various schools, industrial art shops. And I teach these kids in groups of 10 to 12 students how to make paddles. I also teach adults. This program is now part of the Red River College program. So any industrial arts teachers that come through know how to make a paddle, and they can then, of course, teach it to their students in the future. So how many did I teach? A lot.
A lot, many. What is it about a paddle that people want to carve one?
Well, in Canada, it has a direct connection to history. It has a direct connection to First Nations culture. It has a direct connection to being fit and getting out in the bush and getting out in the wilderness. You can put art on your paddle, so there's a connection to artwork. The paddle itself is a piece of art. I know that some people make their paddles and hang on the wall and never use them. I don't like that idea, but that happens. It's something that is quintessentially Canadian, and it has a lot of ramifications in regard to history.
You mentioned you're a canoeist. What's it like paddling with something you made?
Oh, there's nothing, you can't compare it to anything else as far as paddling your own canoe that you've made, number one, and number two, a paddle. The paddle is, it's part of you when you're canoeing. You're using it all day, thousands of strokes during the course of the day, and if you've done a good job on making your paddle, it makes you feel that much better. It's part of an extension of you when you're out canoeing.
How long does it take to carve one?
It depends on who you are. If you've just learned from me, I come to these programs with a blank that has a basic shape of a paddle, and people right away think, oh, it's done. Well, yesterday the people found out that from 8:30 in the morning till 4 o'clock. They were working the whole time. They took off a half an hour for lunch. That was it. They were working nonstop for that whole time. And that's how long it took them to carve their paddle. And they already had a shape of a paddle that they looked like a paddle. So if you've never done it before, that's how long it takes. If you're a person like myself, it doesn't take a couple hours, 3 hours, and you can have a paddle.
Are you using power tools at this point? You're using, when you're teaching the workshops, they're hand tools, correct?
When we're teaching the workshop, it's all hand tools, except for the sanders. We use power sanders just to speed things up. I'm a woodworking interpreter at Festival des Voyageurs, and there, when you see me work in the atelier, I'm doing everything by hand, no power tools whatsoever. So drop by Festival and you see how a paddle's made with no power tools whatsoever.
So all these hours, and people are working in a group. What do you talk about?
Oh my goodness, that's one of the things that I always say to people when I do a Paddles Across Canada program, and whether it be with adults or with students, the paddle for me, is not the main thing. It's the conversations that start up because of people sort of dropping their guard. They're working on something. They're open to conversation. They're open to talking about something different, especially kids who are maybe troubled teens that don't want to really talk to anybody about anything. At the beginning of a program, they might be looking at their shoelaces, not wanting to look me in the eye. At the end of the program, they're holding on to a paddle, smiles on their faces, and it's just a really good feeling for me, and I think it's a good feeling for them.
Have you heard from any of these students after, years later? Do they say hello or, yeah? Tell me those stories.
It's interesting. When I retired, these students got together. We got 24 canoes. We put 48 people into the canoes, and we paddled out down the Assiniboine River. And they all had their paddle that they made during the course of the time. These are students that are now in their 50s and younger. But they all had the paddle that they made in school, and they were so proud of it. They didn't lose that paddle. They use it, and it was very important to them.
And that must have been very important to you.
Oh, yeah. It was very heartfelt. Yeah, I still remember that with fondness, for sure.
That's a tough age to teach. You taught junior high.
Junior high, yes. I wouldn't want to teach any other grade. I just love junior high because they are open with whatever they say they mean. They just tell you what they think. And I really enjoy that, especially in my area of industrial arts. I could use that venue to be able to and get to know the kids better and understand them better.
And you say that you teach elders as well. Why teach elders in particular?
Well, if I go into a reserve, I like to get the elders involved because I want them, anytime I go into any situation, whether it be a school or a reserve or an inner city situation, I want to be able to teach an adult that is there so that it becomes sustainable. When I leave, that the paddle making program can continue. I have enough tools that Lee Valley has donated to the program so that when I leave, I can actually leave with them a set of tools that they can have for a month or two, and they can continue on another program with other kids and hopefully buy their own tools down the way. But the idea is that the program becomes sustainable by teaching adults as well as kids.
Tell us more about this Paddles Across Canada initiative.
It's an organization that myself and another person who lives in Vancouver, he does Western Canada, I do Eastern Canada. We started as a 150th anniversary kind of thing where we wanted to get involved with paddles and kids and that sort of thing. And it just blossomed into this program where we are going into various, like I say, organizations and teaching paddle making for the last 9 years. And it's really just blossomed. Unfortunately, COVID sort of put a kibosh in a couple of things. But we were going during COVID as well. It was one of those programs that we could do masked up because, hey, it's dust, doesn't matter. And it worked. It worked for us right through COVID. And this program is blossoming. Like I say, it's a part of Red River's program. Every teacher that comes out of there now in industrial arts, they're going to be teaching paddle making if they're teaching woodworking. Even if they're not teaching woodworking, they can teach paddle making. This is quite a path you're leaving, a path of paddles behind you. Very good. Path of the paddle. Yeah, good person, Bill Mason, who coined that term. Do you imagine, can you see a day when you're not doing this anymore? When you'd ever get sick of it, for example? I can't get sick of it. I've been doing it since I can remember. I can't think of a time that I didn't have a paddle in my hand in the summertime at some time, really. And why would I want to stop now? Of all the paddles you've carved, do you have a favorite for yourself? Do you have a favorite child? Did you say that to anybody?
Yes, yes, I do. His name is Dude. He's a pug. You're saying it's a tough choice.
Yeah, it is. It is. I have 52 paddles in my home right now, sitting on the wall. Because in 2019, I made a paddle a week for the whole year to promote paddles across Canada, and I was going to sell those paddles. Well, my family decided that I couldn't do it, so I numbered them in order, sequential order, and they're hanging on my wall. Every paddle's different, and they all are, in my mind, beautiful. Do I have a favorite? I use them all. During the course of the summer, I pull one out, pull another one out. And yes, they all have attributes that are, one's better for this, one's better for that, one looks really cool. So how do I pick the best one out of that? I don't know.
Mark Bleesk, thanks so much for your time today.
Well, thank you.
Mark Bleesk is a master paddle maker. He's also the Central Canada coordinator for a group called Paddles Across Canada.
I'm gonna face my demons, even if it breaks my legs, even if it breaks my spirit, walking around downtown all day. We all got our own reasons, all got bills to pay. One day, son, you'll get it straight, and you won't have to walk this way. Wake up and place your bets. Wake up and wait in line. One day you'll pay off all your debt. I know it ain't the time. Changing with the seasons, going it all alone. I got friends, and when I see them, it feels like coming home. Yes, it does. Grab a drink, come on by. Anytime you're getting high, place your bets and get in line. Even losers get to try from time to time. Get it right. Ain't that a sweet thought? Sweetheart, I ain't one to lie. Take my leave of Winnipeg, get myself a place off a Highway 5 mountain road someday, but not today. Find myself some peace of mind, just behind my eyes there's a bluebird waiting to sing her song, and I'm gonna let her fly. Let her fly. Well, I used to let her out at night when everyone's asleep. But in my dreams it's broad daylight and I let her kiss my cheek. Never thought I'd be the man that I am today. Hey, here I am despite my plans. I think I'm here to stay.
That's an absolutely lovely song there for us. It's called Boy Golden. That's the name of the band. The tune is called Here to Stay. Well, Here to Stay on Radio Noon is your call-in, right, guys? I'm talking to the folks in the control room now going, how do I segue out of that one? Well, your call-in is starting in just mere moments. We will open our phone lines. So call now at 204-780-0893. We're talking about emergency preparedness. It is Emergency Preparedness Week in Canada, and more and more of us have heard the stories of people having to grab stuff and go. It's becoming a reality that is more and more reasonable a thing to expect, almost, in Canada with extreme weather. So we're going to get you prepared after the 12:30 news.
This is CBC News. Good afternoon. I'm Rosanna Hempel in Winnipeg. At 12:30, it's 19 in Winnipeg. Getting cloudier this afternoon. Southeast wind gusting to 60 kilometers an hour. A high of 22 today. A Winnipeg man charged with 4 counts of first-degree murder has now admitted to the killings. But Jeremy Skibicki's lawyers say he's not criminally responsible. As CBC's Josh Crabb reports, it means a trial that was supposed to be heard by a jury will now be decided by a judge.
Lawyers for Jeremy Skibicki told a Manitoba court Monday morning their client admits to killing Morgan Harris, Mercedes Myron, Rebecca Contois, and a fourth unidentified woman given the name Mushkade Bishake Ikwe Ibon, or Buffalo Woman. Skibicki has pleaded not guilty to 4 counts of first-degree murder. His lawyers told court they plan to argue he's not criminally responsible for their deaths. His jury trial was set to begin Wednesday, but in light of the developments Monday, the Crown is consenting to a trial by judge alone. Prosecutors initially opposed trial by judge, but now agreed because they no longer have to prove Skibicki caused the women's deaths. Outside court, Morgan Harris's cousin, Melissa Robinson, says hearing Skibicki's admission was a shock, but it brought some relief to family members. They plan to take the day to reflect on what they heard in court. Josh Crabb, CBC News, Winnipeg.
Peter Nygaard's appeal to avoid extradition to the U.S. has been dismissed. Manitoba's Court of Appeal released its decision today. Nygaard is set to face trial in the U.S. for sex trafficking and racketeering. That will happen after all his Canadian trials are done. The 82-year-old was found guilty in Toronto last November on 4 counts of sexual assault. He's expected to be sentenced later this month. He still faces charges here in Manitoba as well as Quebec. Exotic butterflies are coming back to the Leaf. The Shirley Richardson Butterfly Garden was closed last spring after the Canadian Food Inspection Agency found it wasn't meeting containment regulations. In a statement, the Leaf says it's completed repairs to the gaps in the garden where butterflies were entering other parts of the building. It says it recently got a new CFIA permit to once again import and house butterflies. The first shipment of butterfly chrysalids has arrived and are in an emergence chamber. Butterflies will be gradually released into the biome. As many as 30 different species are expected to be brought in over the coming weeks. That is the CBC News from Winnipeg. Your next local CBC News is at 1:30.
Thank you so much, Rosanna Hempel.
You're welcome.
I personally am very excited about those butterflies being back in the biome. That was one of my favorite things when I visited the Leaf, to see those big, beautiful, exotic butterflies. Riley Lachuk joins us now to take a look at our weather forecast. How are you, Riley?
Pleasant day so far, Janet. Warm, actually already above seasonal for this time of the year across much of the south. So, that's what we're expecting as we get through pretty much the balance of the week. Maybe a hiccup with some rain through tomorrow, but we're looking at temperatures above seasonal. So right now, Winnipeg's at 19 degrees, Portage at 18, also 19 in Barons River, and Thompson even right now at 14 degrees. We're looking at pretty sunny skies across much of the province. A little bit of cloud starting to build into the southwest, a little bit of that starting to make its way into the Red River Valley, ahead of maybe a little bit more instability as we get into the day on Tuesday. This courtesy of a system that's tracking through southern Saskatchewan right now, and will start to move into Manitoba throughout the evening hours tonight. So by supper time, places like Brandon through Boissevain, Killarney, Melita, even as far north as Dauphin and Roblin, getting a few showers through the evening hours tonight.
Now we look at your weather forecast for Winnipeg.
Skies.
I'm Rosanna
as
Hempel.
We get through
getting cloudier this afternoon.
The afternoon into the early morning tomorrow, we're looking at some rain starting as we get through the day. A few showers on and off. So not a soaking rain tomorrow, but certainly we're looking at a few showers on and off through the day on Tuesday. That clears out for Wednesday, and we're looking at pretty sunny conditions throughout the balance of the work week. In terms of rainfall accumulation, we're looking at here in the Winnipeg region, the Red River Valley, maybe a couple of millimeters by the time we hit the afternoon tomorrow. More like 5 to 10 for places like Brandon through the Dauphin region. Today, looking at a high of 21 in Winnipeg, 17 in Brandon, 16 in Thompson. Windy conditions ahead once again tomorrow. East winds 40 gusting to 60 with a few showers. And then, Janet, we're back up into 21 and 22 degree territory for Wednesday and Thursday.
What are normal temperatures for this time of year?
18 for a high and 4 for a low.
So, wow. Mid-20s.
Yeah.
Yeah.
A little bit above seasonal, but I don't think many people are going to be complaining.
I have to find my sunscreen. Got to break that out.
You do.
Thank you so much, Riley.
You're welcome.
Riley Lachuk is our weather specialist. He'll be back during Up to Speed today. And I believe Chloe Friesen is our host of Up to Speed today. Correct? We're not sure. No, it's Faith Fundal. It is. It's Emily Brass. Oh, good. I'm so glad I have these smart people in the control room to tell me these things. Emily will be hosting Up to Speed today, and that'll be on from 3 to 6 p.m. And then Riley will be on the newscast tonight from 6 to 7. But you, of course, can watch it anytime you like on our YouTube channel. Shelley Napier joins me now, and that's a real fabulous thing because it's an emergency preparedness week, and she's very busy in emergency preparedness week. She was employed with Manitoba EMO for 32 years before retiring and now has her own consulting business where she teaches everyone what to do in an emergency and how to keep others safe. Shelley, thank you for being with us in studio.
Thank you for having me.
This is Emergency Preparedness Week. I've been saying, what would you grab in an emergency? That is the question that we're asking folks to call us in and join the conversation. But, so many communities have dealt with community evacuations. I'm sure people listening have been through this. What is it like? Give us a call, 204-780-0893. If you live out of town, you want to call toll free. It's 1-800-268-5483. I can't think of anything that would be more frightening or disconcerting than having to flee your home in a hurry because of, say, a wildfire. What's your experience with that, Shelley?
Well, I agree with you. I think it would be absolutely terrifying. But I think that one way that we can lessen the impact to ourselves is to be prepared. Be aware that if you have to evacuate from your home for whatever reason, know where the muster point is. Like, where are you going to meet up with your family if you get separated? Even if you are planning for your own personal preparedness so that you had a fire in the home. I've had friends that have had that happen. Where are you telling your family to meet you? At the front of the house, at the back of the house, what door are you leaving from? Know what to take with you. Do you have pets in the house? What are you going to grab for them? If you live alone or you have an elderly parent or a family, you're going to plan differently. Grab a go bag. I have one at home. I have a 72-hour kit at home. But for the seniors in your lives, make go bags. Put in the necessities. Make sure that your seniors have emergency response kits, the ERIC kits with all the information on them. Lifesavers.
That's so much information there. So much to talk about. How do you discuss this with your family, say young children, without scaring them?
I think that you approach it as a family saying, we're all going to keep each other safe, and so we have to follow the rules. Just like school, if there's a fire drill, we know that we line up calmly and the teacher leads us out and we go into the parking lot and we wait until we're accounted for. I think it's along those lines. Talk about what could happen. Talk about where you would go and what you would take with you, and then get it ready for in the closet somewhere close that you can grab it as you leave.
So many people say, if my house was burning, I'd want to grab my photographs.
Yeah.
Okay, but you can't, you're going to keep your photographs out or on that shelf. You're not going to have them in your go bag ready to go.
No, and go bags have to be portable enough that they can be carried out. We can't put the kitchen sink in it. It's got to be a small enough bag that you're going to be able to take it.
So what is in a go bag?
For a senior, I would pack some toiletries, a change of clothing. I would have copies of the emergency response information kit that should be on the fridge of every senior.
ERIC, you mentioned. What does ERIC stand for?
ERIC is actually a homegrown Manitoba program, and it was developed by senior resource centers and some paramedics to make sure that they capture all the information of what medication someone's on, when home care arrives, what you need to take with you. So if they had to go to the hospital would know what it is that they are on. So these information kits usually are on the fridge. They're magnetic. And if you had to leave, you should have copies of those in a go bag for those people that would need them.
Number to call to join our conversation today or to ask a question of Shelley Napier is 204-780-0893. Again, 204-780-0893. So you've got your ERIC kit. that's listing all your medications, where everything is. A go bag for a senior, is that different than a go bag for a child? Or
I think that the go bags that you would prepare for a senior, sure, they're going to be different. You look at what needs do you have if you had to leave your home suddenly, and where are you keeping it? Now, if you're fleeing from a fire, obviously you're simply just going to get yourself out there. But if you're evacuating for a flood, for example, and a lot of times that's happened in Manitoba, and people get a knock on the doors, particularly if they're up north, saying you're being evacuated, go and wait for where we're going to evacuate you from. You need to have things ready to go.
we know we have people listening right now who have been out of their homes for maybe even years because of flooding.
Yes.
That's, how do you possibly, they're shaking their heads going, how could I have prepared?
Absolutely. And I work with a lot of those communities, and I've worked a lot of those operations in the flooding of 09 and 11 and 14 and, of course, 97, which was huge. I've worked forest fire evacuations from 1989 where there was 100,000 plus people evacuated from northern Manitoba. We need to think about how we do things. Where do you store your Christmas ornaments, Janet? Probably in the basement.
In a very awkward place.
Right. So if you have sentimental things that you would love to keep, and you know where does a flood come in first, usually it's a basement. Don't keep things that you treasure in an area that are going to be affected first. So do a hazard assessment of your own family home and move things so that those things you do cherish are easily accessible to move.
That's an excellent point. So many of us would share, that quilt that our grandmother made us, or something that really we treasure. That's in a chest down in the basement. Where would stuff like that be safest?
Probably higher up in a closet on the main floor or the upper floors of the home. I know for myself, I went through in my children's baby books and the ornaments that they made me when they were in grade school. I made sure that, because I treasure those things more than almost anything else in my life, I made sure that they weren't kept in a basement, because I have had my basement flood. And I want to make sure that those things that I love are high up and safe. So they're upstairs in a closet on the top shelf.
There it is. Our number to call again, 204-780-0893. What is it that you love and couldn't, you'd be heartbroken to lose or to leave behind? I'm hesitating as I say that because, of course, in a true emergency, we realize the things we really need are the people in our lives,
the
pets that we love. But there are items that you would treasure and that you want to protect if you could. 204-780-0893. What is that thing for you? If you live out of town, 1-800-268-84. No, make that 5483. 1-800-268-5483. Our guest today is Shelley Napier. She helps teach emergency preparedness, and I know that that is a simplification of all that you do. When it comes to homeowners, flooding is clearly one of the big risks. What are other things that we should be thinking about?
Obviously, the ones that come to mind are fire and floods. I actually have had several friends that have had fires and lost their homes. But what do you do for things like power outages? If it's 40 below in Manitoba and you have to evacuate, you're not losing your home, but you have to leave quickly. And other things that we're going to have to be looking at in future due to our changing climate are things like clean air facilities. Are we able to go outside if the air quality if the air number is high? Are we able to breathe in the particles? Think of last summer when we had all of the smoke coming into Manitoba from fires around the country. Think of what that was like. And a lot of people that had COPD or asthma couldn't go outside. So if you have to stay in your home, what does that look like for you? So we've got to start really paying attention to what's going on in the world around us, because it may not affect us directly in an emergency that makes us leave our home, but it might be an outside emergency that keeps us in the home.
You're talking about fire as home fires. For example, what am I trying to say? A fire in your home. If it's very cold, does that mean in the winter your go bag would have extra socks and warmer mittens? You change them seasonally?
I would look around and say, first of all, the go bag, if I had to grab it, I would want to have, clothing that I could change into maybe a warm blanket. But yes, think about what you'd put in your car as a go bag if you were going on a long trip. I've personally had something go wrong on the highway, and it's been cold, and I've been very glad to have those extra blankets and that emergency kit. Every car should have an emergency kit. So it's not just home personal safety, it's personal safety that affects everything that we do.
What is in your car kit?
In my car kit, I have water, and I have energy bars, and I have blankets, and I have flares for the road. I have flags for my antenna. I have a shovel, so I could dig myself out. I have anti-icer in case I couldn't get into my car. I have a lot of clothing. I actually have a snowmobile suit in there because I have felt firsthand what it's like to be stranded on a highway at 40 below.
Do you find yourself ever anxious because of all the stuff you know?
I think it gives me pause. I think that when I see what's coming to us with, the different emergencies that we're seeing across the world, I get anxious when I work with communities that don't take it seriously. I know, although I'm very fortunate to have most of my clients understand completely what happens. But when you go into someplace new and they're thinking it can't happen here, it can happen here. Some emergencies have long return times, but fires, floods, power outages, train derailments, if there's a train tracks through your community and in parts of Manitoba, you need to start looking not just as a municipal government, but as an individual as to what it means. So if there was a train derailment in your community and you were told to shelter in place, do you know what that means?
No. I don't know what that means,
so
actually.
It means
stay where you are.
Right. But I actually was teaching a session and I asked one woman, what would you do if you were told to shelter in place? She said, I'd go outside and see what was going on. And I thought, bless you, because that's probably what a lot of people would do. Sheltering in place means that you want to stay inside, close your doors, close your windows, turn off your air conditioning, turn off your furnace, block your doors, because usually there's a hazardous good on the ground that materials that if you breathe in, it could cause you serious injury. So you stay put until you get a green light to go ahead and leave from first responders. So we need to be aware of terminologies like go bags and shelter in place and 72-hour kits and muster points, all of us, because we are first responsible for our own safety. And help your neighbor. Have a buddy system with those that need help.
A buddy system, how would you set that up?
Well, on my street, for example, I know of people that are older, that live on their own, that might need help getting out. So that would be my first reach. In the case of an elderly resident, make sure that if they live in an apartment block, perhaps you could pair them with somebody else so that they can do wellness checks on each other so that they don't feel so isolated. A lot of what we did during the pandemic. But make sure that you always have an emergency contact for those that live alone or might need some help in your neighborhood or community.
204-780-0893. Would you know what to do in an emergency? Have you survived one? And do you want to share your story? We'd love to hear from you. Give us a call, 204-780-0893. Go bags for seniors, children, different seasons. What about pets?
Yeah, that's an interesting one because in a community, if you are evacuated, think about if you have to leave, you're going to be bringing your pet. But when you have to go to a reception center in a community, you can't take that pet inside the reception center unless it's a service animal. So municipalities have to be responsible to take care of pets and arrange for pet reception. We're actually doing an exercise where we're including pet reception, where we're setting up a separate area where people will come and register their pets.
Where are you doing this exercise?
We're actually doing a few of them. We have one on May 29th in the community of West Interlake, in the community of Ericsdale, and it will include everybody from Woodlands up to Grahamdale. And then on June 12th, we're doing one in West St. Paul, which will include West St. Paul and East St. Paul, and St. Clements. And we're going to be running people through a scenario where they would have to be evacuees. And we're going to open up reception centers and pet receptions, and we're going to test our plans.
And of course, all of this is for those of us who are spoiled enough to have access to roads.
Yes.
I'm thinking about flying communities when you cannot take your animal with you on the plane.
No, absolutely. So you have to make sure that there are plans, and the communities have to make sure that they have plans in place.
What are we not thinking about? The changing climate, forest fires, wildfires. You know, we see them on TV all the time in places, California, and we've seen them in Alberta, and we've seen them here in Manitoba. The extreme weather means that forest fires land can be so dry, it just changes with the wind and spreads quickly. What is your thought about that?
I think that with climate change, we're going to see a lot of different emergencies, and we're going to have to be more prepared. I mentioned earlier about being aware of air quality. Last year, we remember what it was like. It was so hazy and foggy, and if you were outside breathing it in, sometimes it was actually hard to breathe. So you need to pay attention to what air quality is. And if you have children or those in your life with lung conditions, you want to make sure that you're sheltering in place. That's going to be a big one as we see things heat up. I think that there's a lot of things. We're going to see more drought conditions. We're going to vacillate between droughts and floods. There's a really good article that Maclean's magazine put out, what Canada will look like in the year 2060, and they go province by province. That might sound like it's eons away. It isn't. And so we have to really start looking at how we can make a difference in our own world, because that leads to more safety in our own community and in our own lives.
I'm imagining, too, people who, again, feeling so comfortable and it could never happen to me. Well, no problem. I'll just use my cell phone. I'll just call somebody. They'll come help me.
Right.
We take an awful lot for granted. You know, in terms of that go bag should probably have a cell phone charger in it. But,
absolutely.
But it wouldn't. There's big chunks of our province that don't have cell phone coverage. And I'm just wondering, is it possible that, what would you do if you didn't have coverage, if you didn't have your cell phone? How would you communicate with people?
Well, isn't that an important question, and one that we need to ask ourselves? Remember the ice storm in 2019, where it rendered many communities without power for anywhere between 4 and 19 days. What do you have to do when you're in a community and you have no cell phone? You're going to have to go door to door and make sure people are well or cared for. You're going to have to arrange to take care of them, whether you open a reception center as a warming center and you make sure you have a generator. Those are the types of things that communities have to implement in their emergency plans.
And you are dealing this week with different communities. You're in Altona later this week, are you not?
I am. Actually, tonight I'm in the town of St. Anne doing training with probably about 35 volunteers on community safety. And then this week I'm also in Altona, and I'm in Portage la Prairie with a combination of about 100 municipal representatives, teaching them how to run emergency exercises with our association, the Municipal Emergency Coordinators Association. So there's a big interest and need in emergency preparedness and planning.
And what difference does the preparedness, the planning, make? And I'm just saying, that it sounds like such an obvious thing, but if you've practiced it, then when the panic hits, you can think, okay, wait, don't panic. I know what to do. Here's the manual.
And it's even more than the manual. So you have to have a plan, but it needs to be muscle memory, particularly when you're in an elected official role and you're responsible for all the rules and regulations that you have to adhere to. So it becomes muscle memory where you understand the plan, you do it by rote, you know where you are supposed to evacuate to, you know what you are supposed to do in an emergency. And that's what preparedness offers these communities when they train, exercise, and plan.
Shelley Napier, thank you so much for taking time out of this very busy week to come in and chat with us today.
It's a pleasure, Janet.
It's been lovely to meet you.
And thank you for having me.
Shelley Napier is Managing Director of Napier Emergency Consulting. To comment on what you've heard here today and to keep this conversation going, remember you can leave a message for us anytime at 204-788-3797.
Should we wait a little longer? Try a little harder. Fall in line. Dig a little deeper now. In the cold, cold ground. Ooh, and the fire started burning bright. Ooh, now the spark inside your eyes won't ignite. Ooh, but the fire started high. Ooh, but the fire started high. Was it just another summer? Passing time till we heard the thunder. Lost our light, I can still hear the sound as the flames died down. Ooh, and the fire started burning bright. Ooh, now the spark inside your eyes won't ignite. Ooh, but the fire started high. Ooh, but the fire started high. Inside your eyes won't ignite. Ooh, but the fire started high. Ooh, but the fire started high.
That's Laura Lucas of Manitoba and Israel Cannon from Australia with their new song, When the Fire Started. Emily Brass is hosting Up to Speed today, the show that comes on this afternoon between 3 and 6 p.m. And she joins us now to tell us what's coming up in the program.
Well, Janet, as we've been hearing in the news, there were major developments today in the murder trial of Jeremy Skibicki. The suspect's lawyers say he's now admitted to killing 4 women, and his legal team says he'll also ask again to be found not criminally responsible. These changes mean the Crown is now agreeing to allow the trial to be heard by a judge alone, no jury. And we'll be joined by CBC Manitoba reporter Caitlin Garulak, who's been in the court throughout the proceedings so far, and she'll help us understand what's happening and what it might mean for the trial going ahead.
Thank you so much, Emily.
Thank you.
Again, Up to Speed airs between 3 and 6 p.m. here on CBC Radio 1. We'll bring you news throughout the day, the latest on that story and everything else on cbc.ca/Manitoba. Everything else on everything else. We're covering everything. Thank you so much for being with us today. I want to thank everyone who worked so hard to put this program together for you. That would include Rosanna Hempel and Riley Lachuk. Dylan Longhurst, our studio director. Thank you very much, Corey Funk, our producer and director. Thanks to the folks on our YouTube page, Travis Peterson and Brad Lillies, the folks who make sure that you can watch this program whenever you want to after it airs. And Nellie Gonzalez and Leif Larson, they are the heads of our unit. Thank you for joining us, and we'll talk with you tomorrow. I'm Janet Stewart. You're listening to CBC Radio 1, and up next, it's The Next Chapter.